All right, as soccer gets ready for another incredible World Cup, the excitement keeps building here. JP Dellacamera, welcome back as you get ready to call another World Cup.
Jason and Jeff, thanks so much. I remember one time looking at a calendar and looking at promos, and it said the World Cup is like 365 days away. Then it was a much lower number, 100 days, then 30 days, and then it's here.
It's
You know, it
here.
starts this week. So um, everybody will say it snuck up on us, but it really didn't.
Nah, and the excitement keeps building. And, whether it's MLS or around the globe, has soccer ever been more popular than it is right now?
No, I said in all these interviews that back in '94, we were never thought of as a soccer nation. Everyone thought that us getting the World Cup would get us started, and maybe it did, but we're a soccer nation today. I mean, you can watch MLS and how that league has grown. NWSL, USL, there's other levels. There's indoor soccer. You can watch all kinds of soccer in this country and watch more games in the Premier League than if you lived in England. Plus, watching games in Germany, France, Spain, Italy, you name it, we can watch it. We are a soccer nation.
And as a soccer nation, before we get to the World Cup that is now at our doorstep, um, tell us a little bit about the MASL. I had the pleasure of attending the expansion draft of our newest and closest team.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you're doing with MASL and why we should get excited about that.
Well, I serve as their president of media and communications, and I have for 5 years. It was a labor of love for myself, Keith Tozer, who's the commissioner, and Shep Messing, who's the chairman. All of us really cut our teeth in indoor soccer. Shep was a big star in outdoor soccer long before indoor started. But really, Keith and I, it was indoor soccer that we really cut our teeth. And so we took it on as a challenge, and it's growing. And I think that getting in Lehigh Valley, the Spirits, as they're going to be called, is great for our league. They're fantastic operators. They've done well in the American Hockey League. And then the following year, we're going to get Sacramento in. They'll have their own building. So I think things are looking up for the league. I think the product on the field is better than most people would ever imagine. And you could see our best players were at TST. We had well over 100. I don't remember the exact count because I don't know how many players maybe joined late or some got injured maybe, but we were well over 100 and the best players in that tournament come from our league.
More high level soccer is good for everyone. It just grows the skill of the game everywhere. For casual American fans who are only tuned into soccer every 4 years, or whether you're a hardcore soccer fan, talk to us about the personality. Every World Cup has its own personality. What's the feel of this one as the games get underway?
This is a strange one because uh, we've seen more criticism of this one really since the get-go, whether it was, going to 48 teams, then later the high ticket prices, and then some fans saying that those were not the seats that they purchased, then the cost of transportation, parking, hotels, etc. So visas, you name it, they've dealt with it. I think at the end of the day, it's still going to be the most successful World Cup in our history. But I think this is different because it's in our country, so we're seeing this, right? I mean, I don't remember people complaining about ticket prices in Qatar or in Germany or South Africa or Brazil or any other place. Maybe they did, and we don't know that because we don't live there. But most people will say that these are the highest prices they've seen. Reportedly, some of these prices are going down, which would be a great thing. But I think the thing that separates, World Cup from international friendlies, Club World Cups, Champions League, whatever it is, are the fans. I mean, you're going to see like the first game I'm calling is Ivory Coast and Ecuador. And while those are not the two most popular teams in this tournament, you might think that you're in the Ivory Coast area or in Quito, Ecuador, when you see how many fans come out from the Northeast, probably mostly from the Northeast area. You'll be stunned at the pageantry, the singing, the dancing, the colors, the culture of these countries. That'll be the thing that I think an MLS fan who's never been to a World Cup or an international game of a high magnitude, that's what they will take away from this.
Between the World Cup and the Olympics, they are the two most diverse sporting events in the world. And you get to call it. How hard is it, or how much time do you have to spend not only learning the game, learning the teams, but pronouncing them?
Uh, I always say that the hardest thing to do is your first World Cup or your first Olympics because you have no idea really how to prep for it, how to study for it. So somebody that's just taking on this World Cup for the first time is probably looking at, 48 teams. How am I going to get to know 48 teams? When the reality is, nobody's going to know 48 teams. That's impossible, to do. Studio hosts will be the closest to knowing 48 teams because they've got to know something about every team because they're on every day. But in my group stage, I want to say I have 14 different teams that I'll be preparing for. So as much as I like France and Spain and Brazil and Germany, I don't have them. So I'm not watching the France game that's on TV today because I don't have them right now. If I get them in the round of 32, I'll have a chance to watch them play once this tournament starts. So part of the job that you have is knowing when to start studying, how to start studying, and when to turn it off. Otherwise, you'll have, 48 teams or 20 teams or 10 teams or however many you have all in your head and they'll all kind of like run together. I'm not worried about pronunciation until the day before the game.
See, Jeff, just because I don't worry about pronouncing somebody right before we go on the air, apparently that's how the pros do it. They wait right until the last second and then
Only for a
wait.
World Cup. No, only for a World Cup.
So,
Only for a
so
World Cup.
JP, unless you've been listening to our show
No.
every week for the last 10 years, you don't know that what he's talking about is that we went to the Army Navy game. And the coach of Navy has a very long name, and Jason would
It,
brag
it was
every
Ken
day about how he knew
Barlow.
how to pronounce it, and then when he interviewed him, he pronounced it
I
wrong.
screwed up his name right on the intro. Just
Yeah.
whole thing.
To be honest, you do the best you can with pronunciations. You try to do it justice. You try to somewhat, I would say, Americanize it because there are some sounds in the German language or the Polish language that as Americans we can't get there, and we don't do the double R's and roll them like they do in the Spanish culture. That doesn't mean you're pronouncing it wrong. You're not pronouncing it like maybe they do in Barcelona, but you're pronouncing it, the way it is here, right? So you try your best to pronounce it as best as you can, and you'll always have people saying, that it's incorrect or it's correct in parts of Argentina the way you're saying it, but not in other parts. So all you can do in the end, is give it your best. But I find that if it's a tournament like World Cup or Olympics, I go game by game. Like right now, I'm doing all my charts so that I've got my basic research on paper, know where I'm going, and then after that, then you fine tune it game by game. If you try to do notes for your first six games, you're not only in over your head, but you're going to struggle because it's too hard to do it that way. You're bound to make mistakes. You're bound to be nervous. You're bound to be thinking you don't have enough time when in actuality you do, right? So if you get the basics done ahead of time before that World Cup starts, if I have all my charts done, then I'm fine tuning each game. And you can spend an entire 24 hours if that's what you have, or 48 hours on your matchup. So when I get to Philadelphia for my first game, Ivory Coast and Ecuador, my charts are done ahead of time. And I would probably have 2 days where I could watch tape maybe of both of those teams, go over pronunciations, go online to find stories from those countries about those teams and that's where you fine tune it. You also have to know we have a studio and they're fantastic. We've got so many great personalities there now. I'm sure you guys know. They're going to take it at the start of the game. We'll take it right at the whistle probably. They'll take halftime, they'll take postgame. So, to be prepared to tell all these long Olympic type stories in game, it's probably not going to happen. You can overdo that. And so it may sound simple. It probably does. But even at a World Cup or Olympics, you should try to simplify it because only in a regular game, for what you studied for, if you get more than 30% on air, you've overtalked it.
I mean, you're going to be calling the action. I don't think you're going to have as much time to tell the stories. Let's
Right.
talk about the feel. What's your overall read on the U.S. men's team? It's the first time they include 13 players from Europe's Big Five league, 8 players from MLS.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like they have a ton of depth in the central midfield. What's your read on this team as they enter the tournament?
Well, the only surprise, like for me, was Diego Luna not being on it. I understand he had an injury. Some people said that Tessman, was a surprise, that Gio Reyna was a bit of a surprise. But I mean, by and large, I think whenever we get to a World Cup, if it's 26, I can probably guess 23, maybe 24. In the old days, it was 23 and you could guess 20 or 21, I would say. So I don't think this team has a ton of surprises, I would say. I liked what I saw in the Germany game, and I also didn't like conceding a goal in the second minute. And to be honest, I was fearing the worst when Germany scored in the second minute. It's like, oh boy, what's going to happen next? But after that, I saw some good things from our team. I think our team is very talented. I think that in their group, and that's another thing, it's hard to memorize all of these groups, right? USA's group with Paraguay, Australia, and Turkey. I think at worst, they're second in that group. But I think depending on that first game, you beat Paraguay, I think you win the group.
I think
You
they just had
draw
an
with
injury the other day too. I think Paraguay just had an injury the other night too in their
Yeah, I'm
game.
hearing about injuries with a bunch of teams. Not sure like what's changed. There was one team, a player was injured and they're not going to replace him. Netherlands just made a change today, I saw. But if you come away with no points against Paraguay, zero, um, you lose the game. Now you've got two games. One is against Australia, one is against Turkey. And you know that in order to finish first to second, you got to think you got to win them both if you get no points, right? If you get no points, you're also probably struggling with confidence. So I think I can't overstate how big game one is for the US. If they lose it, that doesn't mean that they won't advance. They still might get in as a third place team, or, there's upsets in a World Cup. They could still finish second if they lose the first game by getting 6 points. But I would feel a lot better if the US has a good result. They don't have to win by a big margin, but win the game. That makes you a plus in terms of the goal differential if it comes down to that tiebreaker. And then you're confident depending on the way that game goes. Uh, I want to see both, though. I want to see the 3 points and a good performance for the confidence sake, right? Because if you get 3 points and everybody says, you know what, that was a really bad game. I know you got the 3 points and it's better than nothing, but I wonder about the confidence at that point. Are you saying to yourselves, man, we were lucky here. Maybe we're not as good as we think we are. And that's not just players. I mean fans too. We want our fans to be on the bandwagon. I think in the Germany game, after a slow start, you could hear the crowd come in there. And on the Anthony Robinson goal, which was an amazing goal, obviously. I mean, that's as pro-American crowd as we've had in our country. You tell me when was the last time it was that loud?
It was an amazing scene.
Is Matt Freese, who is a former Philadelphia Union goalkeeper,
Mhm.
is on this team? Is this his time to shine?
We hope so, right? We really hope so. Matt Freese is a good goalkeeper. No one's questioning that. I think he's had good games for the U.S. team. Um, if you pounced on his mistakes, then that's not really fair because other goalkeepers with more experience than him make big mistakes too, right? So I'm not doubting Matt Freese. I've thought that since he took over that he was going to be the USA's number one goalkeeper. I don't think Matt Freese has to win us games, but he can't lose them, if that makes sense. I think he makes the saves that he's expected to make. And as long as he doesn't give up the bad one, the real bad one that, at a critical time, I don't blame him for that first goal. We all saw it. You have to have your man before he gets through. I mean, a lot of things go wrong on that goal, so I don't blame him for really either of those goals. Um, he didn't make a big mistake in that game. He showed composure, I thought, in that game. I have confidence in Matt Freese. Is he Tim Howard? No, but who is? We don't have Tim Howard anymore. We have him as a broadcaster, but we don't have him in goal, right? And that's different. I hope Freeze becomes Tim Howard, and if he doesn't, I hope somewhere there's another Tim Howard because for years we've had goalkeepers, going back to Miola, Friedel, Keller, Howard. Goalkeeping was never an issue for the U.S. It was never a question. The only question was, who's going to start? Is it Friedel or Keller? Because, they're both great at the same time.
Well, and you've watched Freeze since he's come up back to your Union calling days. So, I mean, you've
Yeah.
really seen the growth of him as a player as he's gone on.
Yeah.
Uh, if we look around the world a little bit, separating the U.S., who else is a legitimate World Cup favorite here?
I like France. I think, finishing as a runner-up the last time taught them what you have to do to get there, I would say. And their talent is amazing. Mbappe, Dembele, and the list goes on and on. I think Spain is another one. If you only would give me two choices, those are my two. I think, Argentina, Messi's still great, guys, but he's 38/39, I think during the World Cup. And it's tough to repeat only twice in history. Has anybody repeated as champions? And it's several years since that's happened, right? So I think Argentina is still good. I don't think that they win it. So I'm going to go with those two. And I think that, when you think about how few countries have ever won it, I don't think it's going to be a newcomer that wins it, this time around. I think it's, one of the ones that you would think about. And I think it's France or Spain, like I said. Germany's better than maybe we've given them credit for after not doing so well the last couple of World Cups. Brazil is not what they once were, but I would never want to say, nah, Brazil can't win it. I'm not ready to say that under Carlo Ancelotti. So I think there's some good teams out there, and there's always going to be a surprise. And if you guys just look back at history, there are defending champions that lose in the group stage. We've seen it. So there's going to be upsets here for sure. There's probably going to be some blowouts because it's 48 teams. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see some of the best soccer the world has ever seen. And we're going to see it in our country, Mexico, and Canada.
You mentioned a surprise. We see it every year or every 4 years. Who, if you were to say, who's the dark horse that
Morocco. Morocco.
why? What do we
They
look
they,
for there?
they finished fourth in 2022, and they impressed everyone with their ability to attack as well as defend. I think they're more disciplined than anyone ever gave them credit for, and they've had good results ever since then. They're a confident team now, and so I think if you're asking me for like, a dark horse team, I I would think it's Morocco. Uh, who else? You've got the list there too. Like who else would you think could be a dark
England?
horse team? I'm sorry.
England?
I don't think they're dark horse. I think England's a funny England's a funny one, I think, because I'm telling you the two that I think are going to win it. If you said to me I could expand that list to five, I would say England could be in it. But England's a funny team in the sense that they could win it, but they could also be disappointing. You know what I mean? They could also not get to as far as you think they're going to get. Like, I think with England, you almost never know, if that makes sense. I mean, Harry Kane's going to have to lead the way, and he's been in great form. But again, if you let me expand the pool, England would be in there. So
Right.
would Germany.
So if we go out of expanding the pool, what about like a Japan or something like that? They seem like a deep team coming in. Is that somebody who can make a little noise?
Japan's in with, as I look down. the Netherlands, Sweden, and Tunisia. So I look at in that group, I'm thinking Japan could finish second. They could finish third and advance. I always liked Japan as a team for the men and the women both. I think they're highly technical players on both sides. It's not speed only. They're fast, but it's speed of play, I would say. They move the ball as well as anyone else. They move with and without the ball as well as anyone else too. They just haven't had um, as many stars, I guess, more so in the men's game than on the women's side. I think Japan always gives the U.S. women's national team fits when they play against them. So if there's a team from Asia that could be a dark horse, you could look at Japan. But here's the other thing. When somebody asks me who do I think can win it, you don't have to win every game in the group stage to advance, right? But
Right.
in the knockout stage, you do. Who can win? Now there's an extra one, right? So it's round of 32, round of 16, quarterfinal, semifinal. You have to win four games, win them to get to the final. And so when somebody says, let's say it's Japan, can they get to the final? I say no. I don't think they could win four games in a knockout against clubs, nations that are going to be better than they are. If you want to say Mexico, US, four games is hard to win. You got to win them, even if it's a penalty kick shootout. It's one extra game. Three games is tough enough to
If
get
the
to the
U.S.
final.
is going to penalty kick shootouts, Jeff will tell you I'll be in the fetal position, unable to watch and breathe. So
Well, I hope the US goes deep, but it depends again. Where do you finish? Who do you play in the round of 32? In Qatar, the U.S. did as well as I thought they were going to do. I never thought they would beat the Netherlands. Never. I think the Netherlands were unbeaten in like 17, something like that. So I never expected that. So for me, U.S. succeeded at that World Cup. Now, had they played another nation that was not better than the U.S., but equal to or maybe slightly better, yeah, they could have won that game. And then now they've got a little momentum, and then maybe round of 16, right? I mean, if you win your first two in the knockout, you've got momentum, and then you start to believe, right? So, like as I'm saying this to you now, no, I don't think Japan could win four straight games in a knockout. No, I don't think Belgium could win four straight games in a knockout. But if they won two, and you ask me, could they win two more? I would say yes, they can.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't studied all prior World Cups. This seems like this World Cup, the venues, is the largest geographic region, which with diverse climates.
Oh,
And within those diverse climates, you also have diverse settings in that some of the games are being played in controlled conditions, 70-degree perfect weather,
yep.
indoor stadiums. Others are being held in places where you could have 90, 100-degree heat.
Houston.
Is there an unfairness to this depending on where you've been placed to be playing games? Because I got to imagine that if you're an athlete, no matter how good you are and how well conditioned you are, if you're playing games in 100-degree sweltering humidity, and then another team is playing the round before in a controlled condition, doesn't that give them an advantage, or am I overstating it?
No, the honest answer is yes, right? And there's other people that would do this research that could tell you more, such as um, advantage of playing games in altitude as opposed to not altitude, right? Who's traveling more than somebody else? I'd like to think it all evens out. It probably doesn't. But I mean, if somebody's playing three games in a group stage in 100-degree temperatures, I'm hoping that they're not traveling as much as maybe someone else. So maybe there's more, rest recovery for them. Um, but yeah, it's probably not fair because of what you're saying. It's also in three countries, right?
Right.
Altitude of Mexico and maybe some other US places. Heat and humidity, Houston. some of the stadiums, like you said, are controlled, um, air controlled, right? So like a roof closing or half closing or whatever they're going to do. So yeah, but I think that's, you know, it's in the World Cup, right? So you can make excuses for it if you want. At the end of the day, everybody's going to be playing, 3 games in a short period of time. Everybody is going to have some kind of a travel. Everyone's going to have some kind of a complaint about what it is, whether it's the schedule, how they got there, when they got there, long lines trying to get into a stadium, uh, security issue, whatever it is, right? Uh, but at the end of the day, everybody's gonna be dealing with something.
I would not want to play in Miami though.
Is there a
Uh,
story?
you know
Good.
what though? But your point though, Jeff, is good in the sense that, if you're a coach, you've got to manage that in a locker room, right? You've got to, the first sign anybody's complaining about the Heat, like, hey, guys, we got 3 games in this. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear it. Like, rest your players. You can make 5 subs, right? You're going to have a hydration break. So, coaches won't want to make excuses. They will want to manage it within their dressing room area as best that they can. I think the team that makes the most excuses probably gets the least amount of points.
What's the one thing fans should look for early in the tournament that will predict who can actually win it?
Maybe surprises or an injury, a key injury, right? Um, does Ronaldo start for Portugal? Is Messi healthy? Is Mbappe off to a good start? Oh, wow. Mexico won their first 2 games. Are they better than we thought? U.S. destroys Paraguay. This is good. You know what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
early results. One of the minnows gets a victory, right? My last World Cup in 2022 for the men, Saudi Arabia beat Argentina. No one had that on their bingo card. Um, I'm including myself. I thought it was going to be a blowout, before the game. Like that was my thought. Argentina's going to blow them off the field. They lost. Argentina lost. It was the only game, right, that they lost. They win the World Cup. Um, how bad of a start was that?
Yeah.
Right. So, I
Who
mean, that's what everybody's going to say. If the US loses the first game, somebody's going to say, well, so did Argentina, right? But that's factual, right?
who yep.
Factual.
Who in this World Cup, just for US fans, who's going to become the darling for the US team and who's going to be the darling outside of this country that people may not know about,
I think everybody knows Messi, Ronaldo. I think
right?
not enough people know Mbappe. Not enough people know Dembele, Lamine Yamal. He's young, but is he going to have a breakout tournament? Is he the player? If he's the player that we're talking about when it's over, maybe Spain does win it, right? But on the US side, it's got to be Pulisic. I think your best players have to be your best players in tournaments. It's hard for me to think that as good as I think our team is, and it's not a one-man band. I think if Pulisic does not have a very good World Cup, that it'll be reflected in the U.S. result. I mean, if you're going to tell me today that, he doesn't score and he plays poorly, but the U.S. advances deep, I would question that. I'm
I
not saying he has to win Golden Boot or Golden Ball or has to score multiple goals, but he has to be our best player.
I
My
just
opinion.
I just want to see the US advance because I want to see the country buy in. Like when the women advanced here, it was crazy. If you have that, if you have the men actually coming out hot and playing well here
Of
on
course.
our soil, the games are actually in time zones that people can watch. That'll be awesome. Just the feeling in different communities to have
Yeah.
that.
Well, I remember 99 Women's World Cup. They started at Giant Stadium and the tournament built from there. And the bandwagon became, um, I don't want to say overcrowded because it's never overcrowded. You can't have too many people on the bandwagon, but I mean the bandwagon was pretty heavy each game, right? As they won, because people didn't know then how great this U.S. women's team was. I mean, they knew that they would be a favorite, but they lost earlier in the previous World Cup in 1995. So even though U.S. was a favorite, it was on home soil. USA versus China, could have gone either way. Brazil was good too back then, and there were other nations as well. So the momentum built up, right? So for the US, they they win against Paraguay, and then you'll hear it, you'll see it, you'll feel it on the bandwagon. Win the next game, wow, that bandwagon, starting to move. Win a third game, like forget about draws, like you're winning. Now you're gonna have people thinking this team could go on a very deep run. Contrast that with losing the first game against Paraguay. Um, the the diehards will probably still say, you know, hey, that was a tough loss, but we got two more games to go. We're going to be okay. The ones that are potential bandwagon jumpers on or off, the neutrals, the ones that are tuning in for the first time, they don't know how good our team is, uh, are going to take some of the air out of that balloon, sadly. But that's reality.
We've been lucky enough to be able to listen to you for years as somebody calling Philadelphia Union games. How big do you think this is for the city of Philadelphia to be hosting World Cup games, and what do you expect to be the outcome to the Philadelphia community of having World Cup here?
It's huge for Philadelphia, but as you guys know, there's a long history in Philadelphia going back to the old days of the Philadelphia Atoms and then, club soccer in the area, Lamar Hunt US Open Cup back in the day. Indoor soccer started
The
big in
kicks.
Philadelphia. Yeah, even before them, right? Philadelphia Fever, I want to say. Was it the Fever? Back then in the old MISL, I think it was the Fever. But Philly's had a long history of soccer, and the Philadelphia Union have only added to that. I was there when they made the announcement with Ali Bedoya in downtown Philly, and you could see, the enthusiasm that was there. I've been reading a lot about how some of our cities, some of our hosting places have struggled with corporate sponsorship. Not in Philly's case. I mean, they've
Oh,
been on it for the last 2 years. I don't want
Philly's
to
the
say,
model.
yeah, I don't want to say names because I'm going to forget somebody, but they know how to do it in Philly. They know who to call. Uh, when the guys in Philly call a major company, the person at the other end is really asking, how much do you want? You know what I mean? Like it's not a pressure thing. It's just everybody buys in. And I know they've been doing this for well over 2 to 3 years, right? And so I'm not surprised when I read that Philly's offering this stuff for free that somebody else is not offering, right? Not surprised at all because Philly's gotten the job done with the corporate sponsorship. Some of these other places are way behind for whatever reason, but not Philly. So yes, it's going to be exciting for Philadelphia. Yes, they 100% deserved it. And if they thought that attendance and atmosphere at the Club World Cup was big last year in Philly, they haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, that was a scene last year. I'm glad you're going to be here to call it and see it for yourself and be in the middle of the community. We always appreciate your insights and perspective, especially with games and the World Cup approaching. JP Dellacamera, go back to your studying and have a good call.
I'm so thrilled, guys, that my first game is in Philadelphia. Couldn't ask for anything better.
Awesome. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you.